Hello YouTube, this is Tula and I'm still on my exploration journey of the opaque colors I created. I tried looking for a darker surface to paint on, and I found this block I had of black paper. Ouch, sorry about that. These are the tests I made to see what kind of flowers I want to create and what sort of leaves I should match them to. And I started saying that this paper is smooth, it's not watercolor paper and it's not very thick, but it's dark. And I really enjoyed how the colors looked on it. So I am painting some flowers, of course. I'm starting with my medium purple to create the flowers. I'll talk about the paints soon. I'm trying to think of the shape. And I want my movements to be both free and quick and loose, because something of that energy remains in the flower. But I am at the same time trying to think how the flower will look, so what direction the petals are in. And these colors I'm using, I made them 2 days ago. This is from yesterday. They are just watercolors with a bit of Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white, which the website describes as opaque watercolor. I'm supposing it has some chalk in it. It feels like white gouache or white ink. I think both would work in this instance. You don't have to have the Dr. P.H. Martin bleed proof white. This is supposed to be a bud, flower bud, so it's closed. And now a third flower, again trying to be both quick and loose, and yet think about the direction of the petals and how the flower is. In my tests, I left one of the flowers with a black inside, so the petals didn't connect to each other, and when I added the stamen, that looked very strange. So I am feeling the inside of the center of the flower here. And I'm using I have 3 shades of purple. I'm using the middle one so that I can add both darker colors and lighter ones on top. And the brush I was using is the Vinci Casaneo quill number 2. I have a 0 as well that I'll use later, and I like them a lot because they're very soft, and they also have a nice tip to them. Now I'm trying to think of the direction in which I want the branches to go. I don't want realistic branches. I want curvy lines that will be aesthetically pleasing, to me at least. And again, I'm air drawing before making a lot of the lines. I like that I didn't place the flowers at the tips of the branches. I think that came out nicely. You'll see and judge for yourselves later. And this brush is the Princeton Heritage #1 that I really like. I like a lot of brushes. Now some of my lines are coming out very wobbly. I'm not going in a comfortable direction for my hand. And I maybe need to practice more, but it doesn't really matter, I think, in the overall result. I was trying to think earlier of how to explain how I decide about the composition, where to place the branches, what shape, what direction they should have, and that's really hard to know why I choose one thing and not another in many instances. It's a matter of feeling. Instinctual, I would say. So now I'll be going on to the leaves, and I'm using the little sister, the Vinci Casaneo quill, but this time the 0. These opaque colors feel very different. I think they feel the same as gouache. The when you move the brush on the paper, the feeling is very smooth and it's very pleasing. There's no abrasion, no, don't have the word for it. It's very nice, although I have a lot of paint on the brush, and so it doesn't give me the fine details that I'm used to with watercolors. And also the blending of colors is very different. I like with watercolors to have the colors blend on the paper, and sometimes I place several shades on the brush, and I can and should place several shades on the brush with these opaque colors, but they don't flow because they're thicker and have more body. They don't flow into each other like watercolors do. So it's a very different experience. I was a little frustrated here by not getting fine tips at the tips of the leaves, but nobody said leaves should have fine tips to them. That's the brush is able to give me fine tips, but the color is thicker, and so it's harder to get those fine lines with it. So I decided to go the other way, start at the tip of the leaf, and I decided on quite rounded leaves. I thought they would match these sort of flowers. These are of course all imaginary. I'm not looking at anything. The TV is on in the background, so this is just from my imagination. So I've done most of my leaves and I decided to add smaller ones. And I'm not sure what brush I'm using here. This is a Princeton brush. I think it's either the Neptune or the Heritage. The three greens that I mixed are not very different from each other, and that has advantages and disadvantages to it. On the one hand, I find that in some instances when I have shades or colors that are too different from each other, the contrast is too much. And so there is an advantage to using shades that are closer and have gradations that are not so obvious, that are more subtle. But I think maybe my shades here are too close to each other because I don't see a lot of variation in the leaves. Okay, so now I am adding a darker purple to the center of the flowers. You can see that I already created one. And I'm flicking the brush from the center of the flower outwards, again taking into account each petal and each part of each petal to imagine to imagine how this petal is flowing, what its direction is, what movement is there in it, and trying to follow it. And I'm flicking outwards so that I can get the edges to fade into the petal from dark to lighter. And I'm adding a darker. Sorry, that was a truck. I'm adding a darker purple now, not completely covering the purple I just added, just to give it a bit more depth. And I think I could have gone even a shade darker. So now it's time to add the lighter purple, and I want this to be mostly at the edges of the petals. And I'm trying again to think of where the light is coming from and the shape of the petals that I see in it. And this time I'm flicking from the edge inwards because again I want the edge of my stroke to blend into the flower, to the center of the flower. And with gouache and also with these opaque colors, they re-wet. So I'm trying to use very soft brushes so that I don't disturb the paint layers underneath. I'm being quite light-handed, and now I'm adding a bit more darks, as you can see, to shape this bud, to give it some depth and some movement. Now I'm imagining here a curling petal. So this is the shading of the back side of the petal, really. When I add the lighter colors, you'll be able to see it more clearly. Adding some shades, some shadows. You can see I'm placing them mostly inwards and not at the edges of the petals, which I imagine to be light. Okay, so because the purple I just put on was still wet, I went over and added lighter colors to the other flower. And now that the purple is dry, I'm adding the lighter shade to this one. And you just saw me making one line in which I went from the center of the flower outwards, and I realized this was a mistake. I got a harsh border there that I shouldn't get. So I'm moving the paper around so I can go from the edge of the petal inwards and not the other way around. And just like before, I'm trying to think of the movement and the light. And the way each petal is constructed and how it's formed. In my palette I have this darker brown that you see in the bottom left, and I'm using that to create the initial layer of the stamen. If I just put the yellow on, they'll be very flat looking, so this will be a little shadow to round them up. I apologize for my head coming into the picture, but I was really leaning into it to see what I was doing. Connecting the stamen, the pollen. Okay, now it's time for the yellow. In the yellow mixture, I have the bleed-proof white with watercolors, but then I added some gouache as well. I added lemon yellow, yellow ochre, and light magenta. And I'm trying to put very thick dabs of color because I want the yellow to be bright and very opaque. And you can see that I'm placing my yellow a little to to the left and above my dark colors, because I want the dark to show through, to give dimension to my pollen, this stamen. Hello, Ram. My cat came to visit. Choo choo. Now I'm looking at my painting and deciding that I need a few more smaller leaves to finish it off. אתה לוחץ על הכפתורים. And when looking at these branches, I thought I can cover the edges with a few leaves, so they don't just start out of nothing. The smoothness of putting on the opaque color is really nice. I'm mostly placing the smaller leaves at the ends of branches where there naturally would be new growth. There's a freedom with opaque colors that you don't have with watercolors, of placing things one on top of the other. That's nice, really nice. So this is it, my drawing from last night. If you have any questions or comments, I always love to hear from you. And you can like and subscribe if you want. And I hope to see you again in another video. Bye bye.